Yeah, some of
What do you
the
got teed
okay,
up for today?
some of the topics we have. I'm just going to pull one up at a time, and we can tackle it. So, accessories for your bow and knowing when to upgrade.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a lot of people when they get into archery, they sometimes get into that like less expensive bow package that has a lot of adjustability. And those bows are certainly appropriate for people to start out with in terms of a lot of times there's not as much expense involved in that. And also they will have the poundage adjustment that people need as a beginner. But sometimes when we get into archery on a certain level, there's upgrades that you can make that will make a huge difference. Whether you upgrade your accessories on your current bow or you upgrade your bow itself. As far as accessories that can make a big difference, a lot of our package bows are like all the accessories that are on there are okay, right? There's plastic parts and pieces. You've had one of those bows before, Dre. You can probably vouch for some of the inconveniences that go with having the plastic stuff that doesn't have all the fancy bells and whistles. Um, as far as like if you aren't ready for a new bow and you have like a whisker biscuit or something like that, one of the biggest things you can upgrade is to a drop weight rest. And those come in a couple different options. There's cable driven and then there's limb driven. And then you'll notice there's a wide variety of prices with those. Some have micro adjusts, some don't. And I can definitely dive into the pros and cons if you want to, but bottom line, I think that it's important to a drop weight rest will make a difference in your accuracy. It's probably the one thing that you can change on your existing bow to gain some accuracy.
Yeah, and
Does
it's
that
pretty cool
help with the
because
rest?
well, yeah, we'll get feedback from them on what they think on that. But these questions aren't coming from me, they're coming from our listeners. But it's kind of funny that this question came in because that's sort of the process we're going through right now with my new bow. Just
Yeah.
realizing I had limitations that I've outgrown. So, like, my current bow only goes to 50 pounds, which is great. Like, you can use 50 pounds and you can harvest animals with that. But personally, I want to be able to shoot a little bit more so I can have a little bit more reach, a little bit more speed, things like that. And so I think as your archery journey continues to go along and you're feeling like you're being held back, or you feel like maybe a piece of your gear, your release, even like I switched over releases and I got rid of my target panic. And instead of my groups going from like this, they went into this. And that was all because of my
Absolutely.
release. And I wouldn't have even known.
Yeah.
Like, I remember shooting for like a year straight and being like, why can't I just like, I see videos of people just like putting them in the same spot. And I'm like, how am I not progressing? Why am I having such a large group? And then Jesse was like, hey, you should try this release. And it was the surprise release. Um, and I was like, oh my gosh, because I didn't realize that it caught me by surprise, right? And it was all that natural instinct. And so to switch over to that and now be able to not have that target panic anymore and to be able to consistently shoot really well simply by changing my release. So sometimes you don't know you need an upgrade either. Sometimes it's just by trying out different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yep. And I tell people it's not always the release that you choose, it's your technique that's the most important thing. But there's definitely releases out there that are easier to execute correctly than others. A lot of our like inexpensive releases have a lot of travel to them. So it makes it harder to have good habits. And there's certainly people out there that can get away with punching a trigger, but the majority of people, working towards having that shot be a surprise when they've got some bad habits built up is a good step towards getting better. I shoot a release that doesn't even have a trigger. I shoot a tension activated release, and that's what I've chose to shoot for the last. It's been close to 10 years, and I've went back to other things, but I find myself just the most comfortable. I think there's like an old saying of like you can't beat the person that has the one bow that they use over and over again, or so having equipment that you're super comfortable with is really important.
awesome. Next question is hunting bows versus competition bows.
Okay. Yeah, that one's one we could talk about for a long time. As far as, there's different classes when you go to competitions. There's a bow hunter class, there's an open class, there's traditional, there's limited, there's Olympic recurve, there's a lot of different ways for people to compete. And when we say like a bow hunter setup, that's a 12-inch stabilizer, a certain amount of pins that are allowed to you're allowed to have, or a certain type of sight that you're allowed to have. And there's little different nuances depending on what type of competition you're doing. So a lot of times it's the same bow you're using. So like if you're wanting to get into competition archery, you can use the bow you have totally. Now you'll see like there's definitely what we call target bows out there. A lot of them have like a little bit higher holding weight. They'll have a longer axle length. Um, like a lot of them are meant to be just really forgiving and accurate. Where as far as hunting, we want to have that. We want to have a little more let off. The bow balances a little bit differently, just to be advantageous to hunting. Is that good?
Yeah. All right. This was a good one. Getting ready for bow season throughout the summer and the importance of technique. We actually talked about this last week about how just, I have found that my lifestyle is focused around hunting. So there's no like
Mm-hmm.
having to like get my bow ready a month leading up to season or getting into the gym, to get in shape that month before season because I live a lifestyle where it is focused around hunting, right? And so it's shooting 3D courses in the summer and getting in the range and shooting paper, in the wintertime or shooting leagues. You offer leagues there at the shop. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a lot of different ways to get ready for bow season throughout the year. If you don't live in a place conducive to be able to like get out and shoot all the time, I think it's important, find a archery shop where we are living right now. The closest shop now is going to be an hour versus a minute down the road in Dillon. So we're going to have to make it a priority to go over there each week and shoot. And like you said, shoot in the garage. We don't have a garage, but
Yeah, absolutely.
in the backyard if you can,
Yeah.
even just getting those reps in, whether it's at 10 yards, if that's all you've got in your house, you can even do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are
Yeah,
some of your
absolutely.
thoughts
And
on that?
I was talking to the ladies in our ladies class last night. You're gonna like with anything you do, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So if you are dedicated to practicing, that's really how you're going to get better. And if you go get ready the month before the season, you're going to get out of it just that. No different than staying in shape or anything like that. So I think it's important, like any craft, that getting really good, it takes a lot of dedication. And, it is meant to be enjoyed as a year round thing. And, shooting year round is definitely helpful for that. So, and, the other thing you were talking about shooting at a few yards. Yeah, you can totally like some of the best practice you can do is at 3 or 4 yards, just practicing your technique. Getting good at archery is pretty fun. Getting really, really good and great at archery is really hard and takes a lot of dedication.
Mm-hmm. So in my bow case, I keep, and you have them at the shop, the bow trainers. Is that what they're called? With
Yeah, like a shot trainer. Yeah.
shop trainer, yeah. With the rope, I have
Yeah.
a friend made it for me, and I have a little wooden handle
Yeah.
that I use on my bow hand. And so when I use that, and sometimes I'll use it even before I go shoot to try and get that warm up down and to feel that release, feel the
Mm-hmm.
warm, finding that right spot on the palm versus just grabbing it. So that's a great way if you can't necessarily shoot and you just want to practice that in your house, practicing that tension, practicing that anchor point. Sounds silly, but sometimes I film myself so I can see my form because sometimes you're too crouched in or you're too far back
Mm-hmm.
or your arm is too outstretched or you're putting your face too forward. So sometimes just filming yourself so you can watch it to see, okay, what are some of these improvements I need to make?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we don't get to watch ourselves shoot. So I think video is a great way. I use it a lot. Especially if I have someone I'm trying to explain something to and maybe they're not able to see it because they're the one shooting the bow. So I'll take, hey, is it okay if I take a video of you? And we'll definitely do that. And it's a great way if you have a way to video yourself shooting, even if you don't have the most experience in the world. I think it's a good, you should, with some coaching, you have an idea of what things should look like. So
Mhm. And it is easy to create bad habits. And that goes into our next topic of good form, good shooting form. We did post a reel on your Instagram a few weeks back. Billy was down in the range and you were explaining good shooting form. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll put this in our stories so people can reference that as to, because you can explain, but sometimes having that visual is really nice. So if you can explain a little bit what good shooting form looks like.
Yeah, and I guess one thing I'd add to that too, and it might be kind of hard to do in this setting, and I think we'd like to do some videos on some things with our proper technique going forward. I think that would be great. One thing too is it's even beyond just our physical form. It's on the mental side of it. We get so, we get to a certain level with archery, it becomes mental and not physical. So definitely having some coaching is definitely super helpful. And understanding, how to get that surprise shot and having some discipline and patience and all of those things that help us become better shots. So as far as, our technique goes, without just physically having being set up to shoot right now, being consistent in your steps, going through your steps in the same order. If you get partway through your process and something feels janky, let down and start over, because we're not trying to kill elk right now. We're trying to just hone in on our technique, and shooting indoors in the wind is a great way to do that. And like shooting paper, for example, is you don't have wind, you don't have terrain, you don't have distance. You're shooting it 20 yards indoors, no wind, and the only thing getting in your way is yourself.
Yeah, and sometimes, like go into the archery shop and ask them. Like you can't, we're always students,
Totally.
right? And so
Yeah.
there was a day that Jesse and I were shooting there and you came down and you're like, I just want to watch your form.